Sergeant Jenna Wallace was just another face on the tarmac, her days spent to the roar of jet engines, the smell of aviation fuel, and the relentless sun of the airbase. She was part of the background, a ground crew member, invisible to the high-ranking officers who occasionally swept through on inspection tours. No one ever looked twice at the quiet, efficient woman who refueled the mighty warbirds. But then, Air Marshal David Harlan, a man whose reputation preceded him, stepped onto the tarmac. His sharp eyes, accustomed to spotting the minutiae, landed on a faded, obscure patch on Jenna's arm, a symbol no one should have recognized. "You served in Ghost Wing?" he asked, his voice cutting through the airfield noise. Her simple nod brought the bustling base to a stunned silence. Only the dead, or those who served alongside them, knew of Ghost Wing. Before we carry on, please hit the subscribe button to make my day, and let me know where you are watching from in the comments. The arid air of the desert airbase always carried the scent of jet fuel, ozone, and fine dust. For Sergeant Jenna Wallace, it was the smell of home, the constant background hum of powerful engines, a lullaby she had grown to cherish. For 5 years she had been a fixture on the ground crew, her movements efficient, precise, almost mechanical. Her days were a repetitive ballet of checks, hoses, and gauges, ensuring the multi-million-dollar aircraft that roared overhead were fueled and ready for their missions. She was quiet, almost to the point of invisibility, her short, practical hair tucked under a cap, her face often smudged with grease, her uniform blending seamlessly with the backdrop of the tarmac. She preferred it that way. Anonymity was a shield, a comfortable, if somewhat lonely existence. She rarely engaged in small talk, her responses polite but brief, her gaze often fixed on the distant horizon, or lost in the intricate workings of an F-16's fuel tank. Her colleagues saw her as dedicated, a workhorse, perhaps a little odd, but harmless. No one bothered to probe beneath the surface of the quiet, unassuming sergeant. And that suited Jenna perfectly. Her past was a tightly locked vault, its contents too heavy, too dangerous, to ever see the light of day. She had built this new life, brick by painstaking brick, on the foundation of forgetfulness. This particular morning, a ripple of nervous energy coursed through the base. Air Marshal David Harlan was due for a high-profile inspection. Harlan was a legend, a decorated officer known for his meticulous attention to detail, his no-nonsense demeanor, and a career forged in the crucible of clandestine operations. He wasn't just a bureaucrat. He was a man who had seen combat, commanded elite units, and understood the inner workings of every aspect of air power. The base commander, Colonel Davies, was a bundle of barely contained anxiety, his crisp uniform even more starched than usual. Jenna, however, remained outwardly unperturbed. An inspection was just another day, another task to complete. She was currently overseeing the refueling of a C-17 transport plane, its massive frame dwarfing her as she moved beneath its wing, directing the flow of fuel, her eyes scanning the gauges, her mind focused solely on the task at hand. The roar of its engines, thankfully, drowned out most of the nervous chatter. The arrival of Air Marshal Harlan's entourage was announced by a sudden stiffening of postures, a hushed reverence that swept across the tarmac. Harlan, a tall, imposing figure with an air of quiet authority, strode onto the airfield, his gaze sweeping over the parked aircraft, the busy ground crews, missing nothing. He was accompanied by Colonel Davies and a retinue of junior officers, all walking with strained formality. Jenna, her back to the approaching group, continued her work, a small drip of fuel on her glove, the most pressing concern. She adjusted a valve, her movements economical and efficient, honed by years of practice. The smell of high-octane jet fuel was almost comforting. As Harlan passed by the C-17, his experienced eyes instinctively noted the smooth operation, the precise handling of the fuel lines. His gaze, always seeking the anomalies, the points of potential weakness, landed on the ground crew member, Sergeant Wallace, her back to him. He noted the precise way she held the hose, the almost artistic control of the fueling process. And then, his eyes drifted to her left shoulder, to the faint, almost faded patch sewn onto her uniform sleeve, It was an old patch, worn thin, its colors muted by countless washes and years of sun exposure. It depicted a stylized, spectral raven, its wings outstretched against a jagged moon. A shiver, almost imperceptible, ran down Harlan's spine. He stopped dead in his tracks, his entourage halting abruptly behind him. Colonel Davies, noticing the air marshal's sudden stillness, looked at him, puzzled. Harlan's voice, usually calm and authoritative, was barely a whisper, yet it cut through the din of the airfield, reaching Jenna with an almost supernatural clarity. It was a voice filled with disbelief, with a haunting echo of a past he thought was buried forever. "Sergeant," he said, his voice raw, "turn around." Jenna, startled by the direct address, slowly straightened up, turning to face him. Her eyes, usually veiled, met his, and in their depths, he saw a flicker of something ancient, something that mirrored the unspoken knowledge in his own. His gaze dropped to the patch on her sleeve, then back to her face, a profound recognition dawning in his eyes. He took a step closer, his voice low, filled with an almost reverent disbelief. "You served in Ghost Wing?" Jenna's lips, usually set in a neutral line, pressed together. Her gaze was direct, unwavering. She gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. The effect was instantaneous and absolute. Colonel Davies's jaw dropped. The junior officers exchanged bewildered glances, a palpable tension seizing the air. A silence, heavy and profound, fell over the tarmac, broken only by the distant hum of an idling jet. Ghost Wing. The name was a phantom, a whisper in the darkest corners of military lore. Only the dead, or those who served alongside them, knew of Ghost Wing. And Sergeant Jenna Wallace, the unassuming ground crew member, had just confirmed its existence. Her meticulously constructed life of invisibility had just shattered, thrusting her into a spotlight she had desperately tried to avoid, and revealing a past that defied all logic and expectation. The silence on the tarmac was a living thing, thick with disbelief and unspoken questions. Colonel Davies looked like he'd seen a ghost, his face pale, his mouth slightly agape. The junior officers shifted uneasily, a nervous energy radiating from them. Air Marshal Harlan, however, remained perfectly still, his eyes, sharp and intense, fixed on Jenna. Her simple nod had shattered the comfortable illusion of her anonymity, pulling her from the shadows and forcing her into a confrontation with a past she thought was buried. "Ghost Wing," Harlan repeated, his voice barely a whisper, yet it carried an immense weight, a profound acknowledgement of shared, unspoken knowledge. He took another step closer, his gaze sweeping over her, not with judgment, but with a deep, almost reverent curiosity. I thought every single one of you was gone." Jenna's expression remained impassive, betraying nothing of the maelstrom of emotions swirling within her. Fear, cold and sharp, mingled with a faint, almost desperate defiance. She had guarded this secret for so long, meticulously erasing every trace of her former life, burying it under layers of routine and silence. Now, it was unearthed by a man who spoke its forgotten name. "Not everyone, sir," Jenna replied, her voice low, raspy from disuse, yet carrying an undeniable strength, a faint echo of the warrior she once was. Her gaze met Harlan's, a silent challenge in their depths. Harlan's eyes widened slightly, a profound realization dawning. He was not looking at a mere ground crew sergeant. He was looking at a survivor, a phantom from a forgotten war, a living testament to a unit whose existence was denied, whose operations were ghost stories, whispered only among those who truly understood the darkest graph. "Corners of intelligence." "Colonel Davies," Harlan stated, his voice now regaining its usual authority, cutting through the stunned silence. "I require a secure private meeting room, immediately." His gaze remained fixed on Jenna. "And Sergeant Wallace will be joining me." Colonel Davies, still reeling, stammered a reluctant assent. He led them to a small, windowless conference room in the administrative building, its sterile environment a stark contrast to the vast, open expanse of the tarmac. The door clicked shut, sealing them in. Harlan sat down, gesturing for Jenna to take the opposite chair. He observed her, his gaze unwavering, taking in the grease smudges, The faded uniform, the quiet strength that radiated from her. "Sergeant," he began, his voice soft, almost conversational. "My name is David Harlan. I was liaison for a very specific, very sensitive Black Ops division during the latter years of the Shadow Wars. We had intelligence about Ghost Wing, fragmentary, unconfirmed, ghost stories, as I said." He paused, leaning forward, his eyes piercing. "But we knew enough to understand the stakes, and the incredible caliber of the operatives. They called you the Whispers." The Whispers. The name, a chilling echo from a brutal past, sent a shiver down Jenna's spine. It was a code name for Ghost Wing's elite reconnaissance and infiltration unit, a name whispered with both fear and awe by their enemies, and with deep respect by those who knew of their deadly efficiency. It was a testament to their ability to move unseen, unheard, striking from the deepest shadows. "That was a long time ago, Air Marshal," Jenna stated, her voice flat, guarded. "I'm just a ground crew sergeant now. My service records reflect that." "Your service records," Harlan countered, a faint, wry smile touching his lips, "are a masterpiece of obfuscation. Every single one of you was officially listed as KIA, or simply missing, presumed dead. The unit was erased from all official databases. No one was ever meant to survive to tell the tale, and certainly not to refuel jets on a public airbase." He leaned back, his gaze narrowing slightly. "How did you survive, Sergeant? And why the anonymity? Why the complete disappearance?" Jenna hesitated, weighing her words carefully. The truth was a labyrinth of betrayals, sacrifices, and a desperate struggle for survival. "Orders, Air Marshal. Black Ops. Deep cover. When the mission went south, we were disavowed. Cut loose. Officially, we never existed. Survival became a private matter." Her voice was devoid of emotion, a practiced neutrality. "I chose to disappear, to live a quiet life. The Air Force offered me that. A place where no one would look for me." Harlan studied her, his eyes searching, assessing. He saw the guardedness, the pain carefully hidden beneath layers of composure. He understood the profound trauma, the deep sense of betrayal that would lead a decorated operative to seek such complete anonymity. "The Shadow Wars," he mused, his voice distant, remembering the brutal, covert conflicts that had raged in the darkest corners of the globe, conflicts that claimed countless lives, often without official law. Acknowledgement. Ghost Wing was sent into the impossible missions, the ones no one else could touch, the ones that guaranteed no return. He looked at her, his gaze softening slightly. "What happened, Sergeant? What was the last mission? The one that erased you all?" Jenna's eyes, usually veiled, flickered with a raw, agonizing memory. The Arctic winds, the blinding snow, the metallic tang of fear. The betrayal. The mission that had decimated her unit, left her the sole survivor, a ghost among the living. The memory was a wound that had never fully healed, a silent scream buried deep within her. "Operation Frostbite," she whispered, the words ragged, her voice a ghost of its former self. "A deep-cover infiltration, to neutralize a rogue cell attempting to acquire experimental stealth technology. We were ambushed. Betrayed. Left for dead." Her gaze hardened, a flicker of cold, controlled fury in their depths. "Only I made it out. Barely. I returned to find the unit officially declared deceased. My identity, my past, erased. It was easier to disappear than to fight the system that had abandoned us." Harlan nodded slowly, a grim understanding settling over him. He had heard whispers of Operation Frostbite, unconfirmed rumors of a catastrophic failure, a unit wiped out. To hear it from a survivor, a Ghost Wing operative, was a revelation of monumental proportions. "Sergeant Wallace," Harlan said, his voice grave, "your survival changes everything. Your existence proves a historical injustice, and it opens up a wound that has festered for far too long." He leaned forward, his gaze piercing. "The military doesn't forget its heroes, Sergeant. Not truly. And a Ghost Wing operative, that's more than a hero. That's a legend." Jenna flinched. The word hero, feeling like a foreign concept, a painful mockery of the brutal reality she had endured. She was a survivor, not a hero. Her anonymity had been her peace, her penance. Now, it was shattered, and the ghost of her past, the cold, unforgiving reality of Ghostwing, was about to be dragged into the light, whether she wanted it or not. Her quiet life was irrevocably over. The quiet conference room, once a sterile space, now hummed with the electric tension of unearthed secrets. Air Marshal Harlan's words, "Your survival changes everything," echoed in Jenna's mind, a terrifying premonition of the chaos about to engulf her carefully constructed life. The anonymity she had clung to for so long, a balm to her scarred soul, was rapidly dissolving. "What do you mean, changes everything?" Jenna asked, her voice flat, but tempting to maintain her composure, despite the rising panic within her. "I'm a ground crew sergeant, Air Marshal. My days of ops are long over." Harlan's gaze was unwavering. "Sergeant, Ghostwing wasn't just another Black Ops unit. It was a prototype, a cutting edge of specialized warfare. The men and women in that unit were beyond elite. They were meticulously selected, trained in disciplines that defy conventional understanding. Their knowledge, their combat skills, their resilience, it was unprecedented." He paused, his gaze softening slightly. "And you, Sergeant, were one of their best. The Whispers weren't just a name. It was a description of your unparalleled stealth and infiltration capabilities." He leaned forward, his voice dropping, imbued with a newfound urgency. After Ghostwing was officially eliminated, the entire project was scrapped. Too expensive, too controversial, too dangerous. But the intelligence your unit was attempting to acquire during Operation Frostbite, it remains a critical threat. The experimental stealth technology, it was never truly neutralized. We've had whispers, fragmented reports, of rogue elements from that very organization resurfacing. They're still out there, and they're still pursuing those dangerous capabilities. Jenna's blood ran cold. The experimental stealth technology, the very reason Operation Frostbite had been launched, the technology that, if weaponized, could shift the balance of global power, creating an unstoppable force capable of striking anywhere, anytime, unseen. This wasn't just a personal ghost from her past. It was a looming threat to international security. "You're saying they might have the technology?" Jenna asked, her voice tight. "The full capability?" Harlan nodded grimly. "We don't know for sure. But their activity has been increasing. And without Ghostwing, without operatives like you, we've been operating blind. The intelligence gap is critical." He looked at her, his gaze piercing. "You are the last living link to that operation. You know the tactics. You know the enemy. You survived their betrayal." He paused, his voice laden with expectation. "We need your help, Sergeant. The world needs your help." Jenna flinched. The words, "need your help." A stark contrast to the years of being unseen, unnoticed. The idea of returning to that life, to the shadows, the brutal realities of covert warfare, filled her with a profound weariness. She had buried that part of herself, brick by painful brick. She had nightmares of frostbite, waking in a cold sweat, haunted by the faces of her fallen comrades, the screams of betrayal, to willingly re-enter that hell. "Air Marshal," Jenna said, her voice strained. "I'm not that person anymore. I'm out. I chose a different life. A quiet life." Her gaze dropped to her hands, scarred by grease and hard work, a testament to her chosen normalcy. "Quiet won't last, Sergeant," Harlan countered, his voice firm, unwavering. "Not if the Shadow Syndicate, as they now call themselves, gets their hands on that technology. They won't just be a threat to militaries. They'll be a threat to every civilian, every city. They operate without scruple, without remorse." He paused, letting his words sink in. "And if they realize you're alive, Sergeant Wallace, they won't hesitate to come for you. You're a loose end, a witness to their betrayal. They will silence you." The chilling truth of his words resonated deep within her. Her anonymity, her chosen sanctuary, was a fragile illusion. If the Shadow Syndicate truly existed, if they were indeed hunting for survivors, then her quiet life was already doomed. She was either a target or a warrior. There was no middle ground. A wave of fragmented memories washed over her. The faces of her Ghost Wing teammates, their unwavering loyalty, their shared commitment to a cause greater than themselves. She remembered the fire in their eyes, the unspoken promises made in the face of impossible odds. She remembered why they fought. Not for glory, but for protection, for justice, for a safer world. The injustice of their disavowal, the callous betrayal, still burned fiercely within her, but now it was tempered by a new, more profound sense of duty. She was the last one, the last survivor of Ghostwing. She carried their legacy, their sacrifice, within her. And if their enemy was Kos, still out there, threatening the world they had died to protect, then she had a moral obligation to act. She looked at Air Marshal Harlan, his gaze earnest, determined. He wasn't asking her to blindly obey orders. He was asking her to choose, to acknowledge the extraordinary past she had tried to bury. A deep sigh escaped her, a sound of resignation and rekindled resolve. The quiet life, the one she had so painstakingly built, was gone. The Ghostwing patch on her shoulder, once a faded remnant of a painful past, now felt like a calling, a silent demand for justice. "What do you need me to do, Air Marshal?" Jenna asked, her voice low but clear, infused with a steel that had been dormant for years. The ground crew sergeant was gone, replaced by a flicker of the whispers. The elite operative, the ghost from a forgotten war. Her decision was made. The fight was far from over, and she was ready to step back into the shadows, to face the demons of her past, and protect the world her fallen comrades had died to save. The small conference room, once a place of quiet negotiation, transformed into a covert planning hub. Air Marshal Harlan, recognizing the shift in Jenna, moved with swift, decisive efficiency. He immediately secured the room, ensuring absolute privacy, and then spread detailed maps and classified documents across the table. The transformation in Jenna was almost palpable. The quiet ground crew sergeant shedding her skin to reveal the sharp, analytical mind of a Ghostwing operative. "First, a full debrief on Operation Frostbite," Harlan stated, his voice devoid of emotion, purely professional. "Every detail, every face, every piece of intelligence you recall, no matter how small, it could be critical." Jenna, drawing on years of suppressed memories, began to speak. Her voice, initially raspy, gained strength and clarity as she recounted the mission, the initial infiltration into the Arctic stronghold, the precise target coordinates, the composition of her team, their unique skill sets. She described the chilling precision of their movements, the silent takedowns, the constant mind-numbing cold. She spoke of the target, a rogue scientist, a former military contractor named Dr. Alistair Finch, obsessed with perfecting adaptive stealth technology, a system that could cloak anything from a single operative to an entire aircraft, rendering it invisible to all forms of detection. Then, the betrayal. The sudden, overwhelming ambush. She recalled the unexpected energy bursts, not conventional weaponry, that had decimated her unit, leaving behind only the metallic tang of ozone and the acrid smell of burnt flesh. She recounted the face of their betrayer, a high-ranking intelligence officer from within their own ranks, a man they had trusted, his eyes cold and calculating as he gave the order to eliminate them. This man, she now knew, was a key operative of the Shadow Syndicate, infiltrating their very own defense network. Harlan listened intently, his expression grim. "That matches our fragmented intelligence," he confirmed, his voice tight with suppressed anger. "Dr. Finch was indeed the primary target. We suspected an inside man, but never confirmed the identity. This changes everything." Jenna continued, detailing her desperate escape, the brutal conditions, her solitary journey through the frozen wilderness, clinging to life by sheer force of will. She explained how she had stumbled upon a remote, abandoned outpost, found a set of false identification papers, and made her way to a civilian port, eventually disappearing into the anonymous ranks of the Air Force ground crew, seeking the deepest cover she could find. So, Harlan summarized. Dr. Finch, the experimental stealth technology, and the active involvement of a high-ranking intelligence officer, now known to be part of the Shadow Syndicate. This is a far more deeply embedded and dangerous threat than we anticipated. He looked at her, his gaze filled with a renewed determination. Sergeant, you are not just a survivor. You are a goldmine of intelligence. And you are their worst nightmare. Over the next few days, Jenna was subjected to a battery of assessments, both physical and psychological. She underwent rigorous tests, her body, honed by years of manual labor, proving to be still incredibly agile and resilient. Her mind, sharp and analytical, was tested with complex tactical scenarios, and she consistently outperformed even the most experienced current operatives. The Ghost Wing training, once thought lost, was deeply ingrained. She was also debriefed by a team of intelligence analysts, her memories of Frostbite meticulously cross-referenced with existing, fragmented reports. The information she provided allowed Harlan to connect countless missing pieces, revealing the chilling extent of the Shadow Syndicate's infiltration and their progress on the stealth technology. Harlan brought in a small, hand-picked team, a covert unit he could trust implicitly. Major Reynolds, a brilliant tactical expert, and Captain Chavez, a master of espionage and communications, were introduced to Jenna. They were initially skeptical, their faces betraying their surprise at Harlan's faith in a seemingly unassuming ground crew sergeant. But, as Jenna recounted her story, her calm authority and the undeniable detail of her recollections began to win them over. Sergeant Wallace, Major Reynolds finally said, her voice respectful, "Your experience is unprecedented. If you can still execute under pressure." I can," Jenna interrupted, her gaze unwavering. "And I will." The ghost wing patch on her arm, once just a faded symbol, now felt like a living entity, a source of power and resolve. Harlan laid out the new mission. Operation Phantom Strike. Their objective: locate Dr. Finch and the main Shadow Syndicate facility where the experimental stealth technology was being perfected. Infiltrate, neutralize the threat, and bring Finch to justice. "This is a ghost wing operation, Sergeant," Harlan stated, his gaze piercing. "It requires discretion, precision, and the willingness to operate without official acknowledgement. Just like before." Jenna nodded, her eyes hardening. The fear was still there, a cold knot in her stomach, but it was overshadowed by a fierce sense of purpose, a burning desire for justice for her fallen comrades. She was stepping back into the shadows, a ghost returning to haunt its past. She would not only avenge her unit, but prevent a global catastrophe. Her quiet life was indeed over, replaced by a new, terrifying, yet deeply meaningful mission, a return to the very crucible that had forged her. The fight was on, and Sergeant Jenna Wallace, the Whispers, was ready. Operation Phantom Strike began with a quiet intensity, a stark contrast to the thunderous roar of the jets Jenna usually serviced. She was no longer wearing the grease-stained uniform of a ground crew sergeant. Instead, she was clad in dark, lightweight tactical gear, the ghost wing patch on her shoulder stark against the muted fabric, a silent testament to her rediscovered identity. Her short hair, once practical, now felt like a subtle reminder of the camouflage she had worn for years. Their first objective was intelligence gathering, confirming Dr. Finch's current location and the exact nature of the advanced stealth technology. Major Reynolds and Captain Chavez worked seamlessly with Jenna, their initial skepticism replaced by a profound respect for her insights and the sheer depth of her experience. Jenna's ability to recall minute details from Operation Frostbite, even down to the specific energy signatures used by Finch's experimental weapons, proved invaluable. She guided them through analysis of encrypted communications, pointing out subtle nuances, uncovering hidden meanings that other analysts had missed. "Her memory is like a database," Captain Chavez remarked to Major Reynolds one evening, watching Jenna dissect a complex satellite image. "And her intuition, it's unnerving. It's ghost wing," Reynolds replied, a quiet awe in her voice. "They were built for this. She is this." Through their combined efforts, they pinpointed Finch's most likely primary research facility, a heavily disguised complex hidden deep within a desolate mountain range, its location a closely guarded secret. Satellite imagery revealed nothing but rock formations, Yet Jenna, guided by her recovered memories of Finch's preferred operational environments and the lingering energy signatures from Frostbite, was certain. The infiltration plan was meticulously crafted by Jenna, with input from Reynolds and Chavez, and oversight from Air Marshal Harlan. It was a classic Ghost Wing-style operation, small, surgical, and absolutely silent. Jenna would lead the direct infiltration, leveraging her unique stealth capabilities and intimate knowledge of Finch's methods. Reynolds and Chavez would provide critical support, monitoring communications, creating diversions, and securing extraction routes. The night of the infiltration was cold, the mountain air biting. Jenna, moving like a phantom, navigated the treacherous terrain, her senses sharpened, her every movement economical and precise. She was back in her element, the familiar thrill of an active mission replacing the quiet monotony of her civilian life. The Ghost Wing patch felt like a second skin, a badge of honor, and a chilling reminder of the comrades she was now avenging. She bypassed sophisticated laser grids and motion sensors, her body a blur of controlled motion. She used specialized tools, some of her own design, to disable electronic countermeasures, her fingers moving with the speed and dexterity of a seasoned saboteur. The memories of Frostbite, once a source of terror, now served as a guide, revealing the very patterns of Finch's defenses. Deep within the mountain, she located the main research lab. It was a cavernous space, humming with unseen power, filled with glowing consoles and chilling experimental equipment. And there, at the center, was Dr. Finch, surrounded by a small team of engineers, preparing to activate what appeared to be the fully perfected adaptive stealth array. Its energy signature was unmistakable, far more powerful than anything she had encountered during Frostbite. Jenna moved silently, a ghost in the shadows. She incapacitated the engineers, her movements swift and precise, her targets falling without a sound. Then, she faced Dr. Finch. He was a gaunt man, his eyes hollow with obsessive brilliance, his hands trembling with anticipation as he reached for the activation console. He turned, startled by her sudden appearance, his eyes widening in disbelief. "Wallace?" he stammered, his voice laced with terror and recognition. How are you alive? You left me for dead, Finch," Jenna stated, her voice cold, devoid of emotion. "You betrayed my unit. You betrayed your country. And you chose to weaponize a technology that could destroy the world." Her hand, steady and unyielding, held a silenced weapon, aimed squarely at him. Finch, however, was a desperate man. With a last, desperate surge of adrenaline, he lunged for a hidden panic button, intending to activate a self-destruct sequence that would bury the technology and herself, ensuring his secrets died with him. But Jenna was faster. Years of combat, years of living on the edge, had honed her reflexes to an almost supernatural degree. She intercepted his hand, disarmed him, and then, with a controlled burst of force, incapacitated him, ensuring he would live to face justice. She then turned to the stealth array. It was immense, a complex network of energy conduits and pulsing generators. Guided by her understanding of Finch's work and her recovered scientific knowledge, she began to dismantle it, methodically cutting power lines, disabling crucial components, her mind working at an incredible pace. The power she held was too dangerous to ever fall into the wrong hands. As the last component powered down, the entire facility seemed to sigh, the hum of unseen energy dying away. The silence was absolute, profound. Jenna had done it. She had neutralized the threat, completed the mission that had claimed her unit, and avenged their sacrifice. Outside, Reynolds and Chavez, monitoring her progress, received the signal of mission accomplished. Zev, receiving the same signal from Harlan, felt a surge of profound relief and pride. Jenna secured Dr. Finch, ensuring he was heavily sedated and unable to cause further harm. As she waited for the extraction team, she looked around the silent, now harmless, lab. The ghosts of Frostbite, the screams of betrayal, the faces of her fallen comrades, finally seemed to settle. The mission was complete. Justice, after all these years, had been served. The extraction was flawless, conducted under the cloak of pre-dawn darkness. Dr. Finch, a valuable prisoner, was secured. The remnants of the experimental stealth technology were confiscated, destined for careful study and, eventually, complete dismantling. Back at a secure military facility, Harlan met Jenna, his face etched with exhaustion, but his eyes filled with immense respect. "Sergeant Wallace," he said, his voice deep with gratitude. "You have accomplished the impossible. You have saved countless lives. And you have avenged Ghostwing." Jenna nodded, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touching her lips. The Ghostwing patch on her arm, now illuminated by the harsh fluorescent lights, felt lighter, no longer a heavy burden, but a badge of hard-won triumph. She had stepped back into the shadows, faced her past, and emerged victorious. The quiet ground crew sergeant was gone forever, replaced by a legend, a true survivor, who had found her purpose not in anonymity, but in courage, justice, and the enduring legacy of Ghostwing. Her future, once a blank slate, was now an open horizon, filled with the promise of continued service, no longer in the shadows, but in the light of true recognition. The aftermath of Operation Phantom Strike was a whirlwind of debriefings, assessments, and the slow, arduous process of dismantling the Shadow Syndicate's remaining networks. Dr. Finch, a broken man, provided a deluge of intelligence, confirming the full extent of their global reach and their insidious plans. His revelations, coupled with the recovered data from the mountain facility, exposed the Order's deep infiltration into various governments and military organizations worldwide. It was a far more pervasive threat than anyone had imagined. Jenna Wallace, once an invisible ground crew sergeant, was now at the heart of this global counterintelligence effort. Her insights were invaluable, her ability to dissect Finch's twisted logic and predict the Order's next moves proving instrumental in neutralizing their remaining cells. She worked closely with Air Marshal Harlan, Major Reynolds, and Captain Chavez, forming a cohesive, highly effective team. The quiet reserve she once held began to thaw, replaced by a professional camaraderie, forged in shared purpose and mutual respect. Harlan championed her return to official service, pushing through the bureaucratic hurdles and the layers of secrecy surrounding Ghostwing. It was a painstaking process, but with Harlan's influence and the undeniable proof of Jenna's effectiveness, her records were slowly, meticulously, re-established. Her Kia status was revoked, her past service officially recognized, albeit under the strictest classification. The news of her survival, and the vital role she played in dismantling the Shadow Syndicate, sent shockwaves through the highest echelons of military intelligence. Admiration, respect, and a profound sense of awe replaced the previous bewilderment. She was no longer just a ghost. She was a legend brought back to life. Jenna, however, remained grounded. The accolades, the recognition, felt foreign, almost uncomfortable. She wasn't seeking glory, she was seeking justice, and a future where others wouldn't have to endure the same betrayals she had. The Ghostwing patch on her arm, no longer just a symbol of past sacrifice, now represented a future built on vigilance and unwavering dedication. She found a new purpose in training. Harlan, recognizing her unparalleled expertise, tasked her with establishing a new, highly specialized unit, one that would learn from Ghostwing's triumphs and tragedies. She designed their training protocols, focusing on stealth, advanced infiltration techniques, and mental resilience under extreme duress. She instilled in them the importance of loyalty, trust, and the unwavering commitment to mission over self. She pushed them hard, demanding perfection, but always with an underlying empathy born from her own brutal experiences. The young recruits, a hand-picked group of the brightest and most promising, looked at her with a mixture of awe and fierce determination. They called her Sergeant Wallace, but in their eyes, she was the Whisper, a living legend, their mentor and their inspiration. She was giving back, ensuring that the sacrifices of her Ghostwing comrades were not in vain, that their lessons lived on, protecting a new generation from the shadows she knew so well. She even found a strange kind of peace in returning to the airbase, where she had sought anonymity. She still occasionally walked the tarmac, the smell of jet fuel a familiar comfort. But now, when a plane roared overhead, She saw not just a machine, but a symbol of freedom, of protection, of the silent battles fought every day to keep the skies safe. One quiet afternoon, Air Marshal Harlan found her on the tarmac, watching a flight of F-16s take off, their afterburners a fiery blaze against the twilight sky. "You've built something remarkable, Sergeant," Harlan said, his voice soft, a rare moment of introspection. "A new Ghostwing, a unit that will stand strong against the next generation of threats." Jenna nodded, a faint smile touching her lips. "They're good, sir. Dedicated. They understand the stakes." Harlan turned to her, his gaze direct. "You know, the old Ghostwing was officially missing, presumed dead. But their legacy, their spirit, it lives on through you. And now, through them." He paused, a profound respect in his eyes. "You came back from the dead, Sergeant. You truly are a ghost among the living, but one that inspires, one that protects." Jenna looked at the Ghostwing patch on her arm. It was no longer faded, but now pristine, newly issued, a symbol of a past acknowledged, a future embraced. She was no longer just a ground crew member, invisible to the world. She was Sergeant Jenna Wallace, the Whisper, the last survivor, and the first architect of a new era of silent protection. Her quiet life was over, yes, but in its place, she had found a profound purpose, a lasting legacy, and a peace that came not from forgetting, but from remembering, fighting, and ultimately, winning. The war with the Shadow Syndicate had ended, but the vigilance continued, and Jenna Wallace stood ready, a guardian in the shadows, ensuring that the ghosts of the past would never again threaten the future.